All right, we are recording again. Sorry, I had one too many tangents, and it's like, yeah, I'm going to start over. Chapter 25 of Star Trek: The Motion Picture novelization. Um, the chapter seemed short. I don't think it actually was, but at the same time, that it's a weird chapter because in some ways it seems like not much happens. In other ways, a lot does happen. We get some exposition, but some of that is poor. I mean, I've actually got three things noted here as just contradictions. One thing that did occur to me, it's possible some of these contradictions were written for the book. It contradicts there, but some of the stuff is what's in the movie, and it's just, yeah, you didn't try to make sure that they all mash up, so it's kind of going like this instead of like that. Um, okay, so it starts with Kirk getting ready to follow Spock, because he has all the instructions, he can chase after Spock. People were like, we'll go with you. He's like, no. I mean, it's Captain Kirk. So, yeah, but before he does, though, Jim, hold your position. It was Decker's voice. Which, by the way, the exec's voice sounded curiously ragged, strained. Get to that. So Decker's telling him, Vidra's sending him back. All right. But he is injured. He will need medical attention, so Decker's arranging for, hang on, what is it actually saying? I just want to check on one thing. Okay, so it is, he got moved to sickbay. Which, when you think about it, actually doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, yes, going to sickbay makes sense. But I could believe that actually you would have a small medical area next to the airlocks. I could believe that. But it would be in like aid station versus full-on sickbay. So, anyhow. So Kirk is like, how do you know this? Vidra told me. Alright. So Kirk does go out, grab Spock, bring him in, kind of like we see in the movie. Not quite the same, as I recall. It's been a while since I watched the movie. I'll try to watch it after this. I'm not entirely sure when, though. Okay, yeah, I need to rant. There's stuff in here that's triggering rants. As I said, a lot of tangents when I did this before. I didn't get through all of it. So it mentions that it is hardly an hour until they arrive, which means it had mentioned in chapter 22, it was 3.5 hours, I think. 3.51 or something. Hang on. Because I actually did make that note. 3.31 hours from Earth, okay? So about 3 hours, 20 minutes, right? Around that. It's now hardly an hour. Okay, so about an hour. So 2 hours have passed since chapter 22. Which is the chapter where, at the end of it, Decker and Ilea initiated sex. But it's also because of certain timeline things, it seems like that's also about when Spock left. How have 2 hours passed? There was no real sense of the passage of time during those events. So it's like, okay, well, Spock got kicked out. Well, Spock had the connection. Vidra's like, well, it's Spock, I won't kill him. But, hey, Probe, I don't like what Decker's doing to you, so stop that. Probe, I told you to stop that. Resistance is futile from my orders. And that whole thing. It's like, okay, so where is that happening in terms of these 2 hours? I don't know, and it is actually very annoying to me because Spock, whatever. There's no reason for me to be too concerned about the passage of time there because we don't know how long was the mind meld, how long was he traveling back. We don't know, and it's kind of irrelevant. Decker, however, there was a problem there because he has been injured in potentially 2 ways. One, certainly. I say, at least he is injured. It's just how injured, in what way, and how badly. Because the probe was ordered by Vidra to stop the attack, which was actually sex. Which, again, it's like, how does... Don't need to go into that tangent. That was the previous video. You can watch that. But it talks about how the Ilea probe It tore through a Durasteel door. So it stopping Decker could be tearing an arm off even. I mean, it's like, that's not unreasonable. And there's like no acknowledgement of this at all. And it's like, there's so many things you could do to acknowledge it. Like having a bruise, you could even just have Decker constantly massaging his shoulder. And that I think would actually be reasonable, that it's like, no, that somehow Ilea, like the Ilea probe pushed him off and it like dislocated his shoulder. So Decker got dressed as best he could, went to sickbay, and they put it back in. Something like that ended. Oh, geez, that's true. That's actually a little funny now I think about it. Technically, because Vidra has no understanding of the value of clothes. Because if it did, then Ilea would not have been naked when the probe had come back. Kirk would not have had to been like, let me push the buttons. Okay, now you're in the leisure robe. But it's like, I am assuming that for the sexual encounter that the probe and Decker had, they were both nude. I could be wrong. I'm just making that assumption. But would that mean that Decker is like, ow, 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 okay, I gotta put my clothes on and get this. Like, you need to put clothes. A probe, Ilea, because he even does say that that the probe is non-responsive to him. That the knowledge of Spock coming back was volunteered by Vidra. It's not that Decker had asked, it just came in non-responsive. It's like, so he couldn't tell her, put clothes on. He would have had to somehow put them on her for her to now be walking around and not be described as walking around nude. It's one of those, I'm technical, okay? I have a technical mind. I know it's technical details like this, because, like, that does technically need to be explained. Because, I mean, but this is also part of what I mean by you do need to actually explain what the hell happened to Decker. What is the injury that he likely sustained from her? And that's, so we know that should have happened. This also, it described that basically almost any time, not basically, but almost any time, I was going to say basically every time, but almost every time, almost any time, I think is how it was phrased, a human and a Deltan have sex, the human's left incapacitated because of the intense mental linking that goes into this, which is part of the reason why Deltans are supposed to have a vow of celibacy in order to be in Starfleet. Because if they were to start having sex with people, it would cripple a ship, potentially. But this was like, this is a problem. At the start of chapter 22, by the end of it, it's like, we're not even talking about it. Like, Decker, yeah, totally, just whatever, take that risk, it's fine. It's, you set it up, you need to pay it off. I'm sorry, those are the rules. It says what the rules are supposed to be. So Decker should be physically injured and he should have some level of mental damage. But let me read this highlight that there's a headcanon way you can do this, but because it's not what's stated, it's only headcanon, which means I cannot take it as true. It's just an interesting theory. Spock was right about its memory patterns, continued Decker. There were pauses in here, I'm just going to skip those. They were exceptionally strong. I thought I had established a rapport with it. Perhaps I had, since Vidra took control of it back immediately. So headcanon can be that while having sex, he recognized that this was not just a mechanical action for the probe. But going further with the headcanon could be that the mental linking was occurring, but maybe he was aware that Ilea was trying to mediate it so that it wouldn't leave him incapacitated. Which actually, when you think about it, if you did have the mental linking, but then Vidra interrupted this, just suddenly interrupted it and even physically threw him off of her, that mental link being severed, it would make sense, would actually cause greater mental damage. So it's like, you really need to explain this, Roddenberry. No explanation. So, yeah, it's like Decker, maybe that's part of the reason why it's been 2 hours. He's been lying on the floor drooling, trying to recover. I don't know, but it's still, you need to explain this. This is not kosher to just set it all up and never pay it off, because they are significant questions. His state should be in question. So, yeah. Okay. This next bit, this is really where I had a lot of the tangents and really just kept ranting. So I want to try to give a preface that maybe I can head that off. Basically, we're going to get some metaphysics, philosophy stuff that I have a dislike for. In a way, it relates to certain concepts that I have concerning my Catholic faith and religion. My issue isn't with that helps me provide context, I think, to it. Not that it's oh, well, I disagree with this because it conflicts with my faith. No. It's that I have a contextual understanding of what I'm about to talk about here that fits into that hierarchy such that I think I can use it to help explain. And then it's also, no, I have other issues with this, but it's part of my understanding for the issue here is based on my faith, based on my religion, my understanding of it at least. But that allows me to better understand what's going on here and why I dislike it. It allows me to better criticize it. It's not, oh, there's a conflict here, therefore I have that's not it. Okay, so hopefully it'll make sense as I explain this and then get to the context. So this is Spock / the narrator concerning what has happened. What he learned from V'ger. Yeah. Okay. How could the unimaginable immensity of this universe around them be only a brief spark in a still greater reality? It all seemed so clear and logical to Spock when he had been part of V'ger's thoughts. Spock had also seen that V'ger was almost capable of traveling into these higher dimensions. But just as their starship was trapped in V'ger, V'ger was trapped here in its present dimension of existence. So, explaining the faith aspect to it. I don't have an issue with the concept of separate dimensions of existence as it puts, but I'd prefer to drop the dimension aspect for now, at least the word, but just levels of existence, shall we say. In that there's the earthly existence here, and there's heaven. These are separate. Okay? And also, the idea that, oh, well, we didn't find some guy with a big beard hanging out in a bunch of clouds when we entered into outer space. So clearly that means space. That's not how heaven works. It doesn't matter that we call that the heavens. That's not what heaven is. It is not existing within the universe. And technically, there is no, line you could draw on a map to get from one to the other. That's not how it works. Okay? So, just that's how, to me, dimensional existence would be. It's no. Just because, even if this is a thing, there is no line, and there shall not be a line between them. So that's why I dislike this, talking about how V'ger has learned so much that it can almost leave this existence to go to the next. It's that's not something that can be obtained through knowledge, in my opinion. That you're not just going to suddenly find that path, find that line on a map. That it is a completely different thing. And that, well, yes, can we get from Earth, this earthly existence, to heaven? Yeah, but it's not we're physically walking a path. Right? That's not really how that works. And to go further, I'm just trying to look. Yeah, so this is a couple of highlights later. V'ger has knowledge which spans the universe, and yet in all this magnificence, let me not continue with all that. But still, it's knowledge that spans the existence. So it's basically talking about the idea that V'ger has a great deal of knowledge of this plane of existence, of the universe. I'm intentionally doing this for this motion because it's horizontal. Horizontal knowledge doesn't allow you to move vertically, because vertical and horizontal are different. And they are separate dimensions, X and Y and Z, but it's an aspect of dimensions is they cannot be described in terms of another dimension. If they could, then they wouldn't be a separate dimension, they would just be that one. Okay, and there is no action you can perform on X that gets you to Y. that's why I really dislike this concept as a whole. And it's not just in this story, it's in other stories as well. The idea that, oh, well, we can do things here and that gets us there. It's like, that's not how that works. So to put it a little differently, and potentially going back to the faith aspect to it as well, you can't have somebody that is just like walking around Earth, learning all the knowledge there is on Earth, and because of that, that means he or she will enter heaven when they die. No, that's not what that means, because there are other things that go into that. I'm Catholic. There's the aspect of there also have to be acts involved, acts of faith. You must live your faith in that way, not just have belief, not just have the faith, but act in it. That's for those. To my understanding, that is something that's more Catholic than you see with at least some Protestant denominations. That's part of the reason why I want to point that out. But it is also that distinction there. It's like that knowledge isn't enough to get you there. And there's also, even then, there's the whole, you can still fail your final judgment. You might still come before St. Peter or come before Jesus, and they'll go, nope, you're not here. You do not deserve to be here. And then you go to hell. And it's like, so it's still, that knowledge doesn't get you up here. That's not how that works. And I dislike that concept. And I've seen in other places as well. And I do remember in one, it particularly annoyed me because in that what it described as how that knowledge was obtained, what the specific knowledge was, this all is one concept, which is a very silly one and very stupid and very shallow. And I'm very comfortable saying that because I remember having that same thought back in high school. And as I matured, thought about it more, and had a better understanding of existence, I also realized, yeah, it's really stupid. The video game that I was playing that had this in there where you weren't achieving that, but characters around you, characters you were interacting with, had achieved it, and this was allowing them to become like gods, where they could control and shape things. And as they fully realized this, all is one, they fully realized all is one, they left existence. So it's like, wait a minute, by realizing all is one, you left the all. Do you not see how this is a contradiction? So it's like that's part of the reason why it's like this is actually a very shallow thing, because it's like, well, yeah, but where do you go from here? It's not outside of the all. That's not how it works. Yeah, I mean, it's just so I am. Yeah, I don't like so much of that. All right. Okay. Yeah. V'ger was everything that Spock had ever dreamed of becoming, and yet V'ger was barren. It would never feel pain or joy or challenge. This is one of the three contradictions I have in my notes. V'ger cannot feel challenged, but feels puzzled by, these carbon-based units. Doesn't understand them. It's like, why are they here? Why do I keep finding these things here around these machines? What is going on here? I don't get this. It's like, it's challenged by their existence. Okay. What was the next one? Okay. I'll get to the next point in a moment. Logic and this Spock is actually saying, logic without need is sterile. No. I mean, that's not true. Logic as a philosophical concept can be applied to things purely out of choice to do so, not a need to do so. I mean, sorry, but I mean, it is. You literally can't, and you do have some people that just do stop and think about existence. And I mean, the need, you might say, is for their own betterment, but they don't need to do that. That's a choice. So and they are in part doing that through logic. V'ger may ultimately learn everything there is to know about a universe. This part of it we can understand. But for all that knowledge, all that power, it has less wisdom than a child. And this, yeah, and it goes back to what I was talking about in the previous video with how V'ger's knowledge and personality seems very contrived. Where it sometimes has understanding, like, oh, maybe it's a symbiotic relationship, these carbon units and these machines, such as the Enterprise, these true life forms, such as the Enterprise. It's like, maybe. But then it's like, Dekker's attacking Ilea. And it's like, you understand symbiotic relationships, which I'm not sure V'ger would even be able to recognize if it only believes in machines being life, but doesn't understand sex, which is something that would be relevant to a machine, I believe. I mean, I gave an example of genetic algorithms, which is a kind of way of building up a machine learning model, an AI model. It's like, okay, it did occur to me after that video that yes, that is not a concept that existed back for when Roddenberry was writing this, but it still is. The idea of generational advancement is something a machine life form would still have an understanding of, because it is a way to advance. These two machines, hey, if we make some changes, combine them together, we have something more efficient. That is in a sense a sexual act. It's a little, to produce another generation. So it is still that kind of genetic movement, but it's why would V'ger be like not understanding it in terms of the carbon life forms that somebody, I mean, it's just, it has less wisdom than a child. Good. That should be the line then, and keep it over here. Keep it on the correct side of the line. You keep having cross over, which feels like contrivances and annoys me. Okay. Did I mention? No, I forgot. Spock refers to Kirk here as Jim, which that's fine. They're old friends. Decker referred to Kirk as Jim earlier, and I know I read that line. I think I forgot to talk about this. He shouldn't. While they have known each other for a while, it still is Decker should be referring to him as Captain or Admiral, not as Jim. So it is odd that he did do that here. I don't recall him at any other point calling him Jim. Maybe that is just slipping my memory. And maybe it was so urgent that it's like, Jim, don't do that. Maybe, but it's still, it would lead into the whole, you need to explain Decker's current status far better so that makes sense. That is excused. That incorrect action. He should not be calling, I mean, it's like, Uhura has known Kirk for a very long time, never calls him Jim. Not never while on duty. It's always Captain or Captain Kirk or Admiral Kirk. It's always correct. Spock can get away with it because it's Spock. McCoy can get away with it because it's McCoy. Okay? Those are his two best friends. But Uhura doesn't do it, Chekhov doesn't do it, Sulu doesn't do it, Scotty doesn't do it. Decker should not be doing it either. Okay? He is not at that level of relationship with Kirk. Anyway. Plus, there's the whole Spock is like kind of near death kind of thing as well. I mean, he's getting better. But, yeah. V'ger has knowledge which spans the universe, and yet in all this magnificence, V'ger feels no awe, no delight, no beauty. Spock began to sink back, exhausted, and Jim, no answers, but it has to look for answers. In a way, I kind of like this. Not just because it is accurate, in my opinion, that V'ger sees all these things but doesn't understand them, doesn't have a value to them, doesn't see the beauty in them. But it's Spock seeing this. And one thing that I forgot to mention, Spock actually laughed. And even if he weren't half Vulcan, I still think it is completely appropriate for a person, only half Vulcan, half human. That is still completely appropriate. That even his father I could see potentially laughing. Because of the whole, V'ger is pure logic, is everything a Vulcan would want to be. It has achieved that, but is still lacking, and knows it even. And that is funny. It is this great irony. This is what I strive to be, and there is misery here for the one that has achieved it. Spock in particular, though, would laugh at it because his human half, not that it is the human half lets him laugh because Vulcans can't. No. But that he has a connection to humans. To these humans, that they have that balance between emotion and logic. That they want to say that they have a sense of beauty. That Spock also can at least appreciate in them, has witnessed in them. V'ger is without even that. So it is just a funny thing. So him laughing is completely appropriate, even with his focus on logic, his focus on controlling emotion. It actually does make a lot of sense. I want to say in the movie, I think he does laugh in that. I'm not sure. But I think in that I always interpret it as just him under stress. Still, like, he is recovering still, so it's just he is so weakened that he accidentally laughs. It's like, no, there is actually something humorous here because of the irony. But it is also the feels no awe, no delight, no beauty. I could see that also being for Spock being very powerful because it is something that he thought he desired here, but then he's realizing, wait a minute, no beauty. He appreciates beauty at a minimum, Spock does. That he has seen them, that the humans on the bridge look at some sight in space and be in awe of it, find it beautiful, and even if he doesn't understand it himself, he knows that there is something there that they do value. And so I could believe, and I don't know, we'll find out, through continue reading, but this could be like how he knew he couldn't finish Kolinar, that there was still more. It could be this is giving him that understanding that, hey, guess what? Logic is not all that there is. There are these other things that are not necessarily logical. I don't want to say illogical. There can be a spot in between. But that this could be him starting down that path to understand it. So actually, yeah, I think Star Trek VI has a very good scene in that, where he's in his quarters talking with Valeris and how logic is only the start, it is not the end. The beginning of wisdom, not the end. But there's also, to align with this, she asks, why do you keep this painting in your quarters? And it is supposed to be a painting of the expulsion of Adam and Eve from Eden. And I actually don't think I think he says from paradise. But he's basically trying to explain that it's a reminder to him, all things end? Is that what he says? Or just that perfection cannot fully be attained? I don't quite remember. But the whole no beauty. Let's step back a moment and just consider, well, that's not just a image of them being cast out of Eden. It's a specific rendition of it. It's a specific work of art of that, because there's many versions of that scene. So like, why isn't, like, I'm pretty sure it is when the scenes on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Why not use that one? Which is probably the most famous version of that scene. I'm not sure, but it's like, let's just assume that is. He's using something completely different that seemed more... Would that be considered impressionist? I'm not sure. But still, it's like, why is he using... Because maybe he finds that one particularly beautiful. So, I mean, just trying to pull that thing that's like a decade later. Actually, more than that. This is 79. Star Trek 6 is 92, I want to say? Don't quite remember. It's something like... It's in the 90s, early 90s, but... And like, trying to pull that back here, that's like, maybe he does come to understand the idea of beauty. And see a value to it, and that's why he would pick that specific picture instead of some of the others. But yeah, and Jim, no answers, but it has to look for answers. To what questions? Is this all I am, Spock said, quoting the essence of the emptiness he had felt. Is there not more? This is also... Okay, yeah, this is also a contradiction. Because you just described for Vidra earlier in this chapter that has such knowledge that it can almost make it to a higher plane of existence. But now it's like, is there nothing more? It's like, dude, you know there is. You're like knocking on the door. You just can't make it yet. So clearly you know the answer is yes, there is more. Why is this an issue for you? Now, if it were not knowing how to get there, that's different. That's different. And that's fair. And it's, as we all know, it is Vidra joins with one of its creators, a human, Decker, does do that, and then apparently does reach that level. Cool. Okay. But it's still, that's doesn't know how to get to that more. Knows it exists, doesn't know how to get there. So, contradiction. There's also, before this, okay. He was both shocked and pleased to feel such profound pain over the timeless, meaningless existence he had seen among the machines on that planet. Oh, sorry, I am starting a little too late. But it must have taken wisdom for someone or something to build Beecher. If there's an answer to that, Viju doesn't know it. I saw the planet from which it came, a planet of living machines, infinitely complex technology, machines that could repair themselves, change themselves to adapt to outside changes. Again, this is contradiction, because we were told by the Alea probe that Viju seeks its creator on Earth. There's also the whole, why did Viju stop its attack? Because the Enterprise said that it is also of Earth. That's where the creator is, or is from, so it's like, so we know Viju's origin is not this machine planet. Viju's origin is tied to Earth. So what Spock is saying here is incorrect. It is another contradiction. It's like, get this right. And it is certainly something that he should have some awareness of. Because it is also then just that question of how does Viju have this concept that this planet that it already patterned, so it destroyed that planet. How does it know Earth is its origin? Like, that's actually very important here. Well, why does it know that that's where its creator is, which would then be its own origin? It doesn't, or does Viju believe that the creator came from there, but then went all the way across the galaxy to? I mean, it just, this is a contradiction because its origin should be at Earth, not this other planet. Or you need the explanation, and I'm sorry, but this is a significant enough point. I am willing to call it a contradiction. That might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but it is still a very great problem here, because you can't have two separate origins like this. So, yeah. Alright, last thing. Starfleet is saying, because they're picking up a signal there, from Starfleet, Viju is 7 minutes from orbit and the power field is dissipating rapidly. Which I'm happy about, because the power field was as far across as the orbit of Pluto. So it getting near Earth would be encompassing the majority of the solar system from our concerns. I mean, there is stuff that is outside of that for the solar system, but by and large, no one really cares about when to go past Pluto. It's like, Fort Cloud, who cares? It's like, you should, but still. So it's like, okay, it's dissipating the power field, so that's good. Except there's another technical question here of why. Like, not why is it dissipating? It could just be well, I don't want to, mess up the planets as it come in. All right. Why'd you have the power field to begin with then? Like, what was its purpose? I got nothing. And it's like, nah, it needs to have a perfect day. Because remember, Viju is perfectly logical. Well, if it's perfectly logical, then it must have served a purpose. What is that purpose? I don't know. Viju is contrived. I mean, I'm sorry, but that is the answer, unfortunately. That it's not here's a line, here's what makes sense for it to be, so it does that. Here's the stuff that it shouldn't be doing. Wait, why are we now including this? So it's like, why does it have a power field? Because it makes it really impressive. But it doesn't serve a purpose. It could. One possibility, but it's false. One possibility. The solar wind itself, an aspect of the solar system, is dissipating the field. Except it doesn't work, because the reason it has the field is it's actually very, very powerful. It's just got a whole bunch of power out there, and it's causing the annihilation of hydrogen. Doesn't make sense. It should not be annihilating. Could be ionizing. I'm okay with that, but not annihilating. You're moving into the solar wind, though, which would have a bunch of hydrogen being dumped into that field. So it actually would make the field more intense, potentially larger as well. Viju had to decide to turn off the power field. But why did it have it? There is no explanation for that, and it's aside from just having mystery there, but Viju is not supposed to be a dramatic character. Couldn't book him writing. One of the challenges for it, and it's part because it's taken me a while to write through it, but also just some of how it's structured, is getting the voice of a character, really understanding how it is they think, and so what their behaviors should and should not be, That's crucial. Now, technically, you can figure that out after you've already started writing a character. That's happened to me at least once, probably multiple times. So. And that's fine. You just go back and edit it, or you go back and maybe you find that, oh, I was writing it correctly all the time. It's awesome when that happens. Love it. But you still need that consistency to make sure that the voice of the character, the essence of the character, is consistent. V'ger's being very inconsistent here. Which is very much a problem because V'ger should actually be very easy. It's pure logic. The line between for what makes sense and what doesn't make sense should be very clear, very sharp, and very straight. And it is wobbly, and it is smudged. Very annoying. I'm like, Spock could have greater inconsistencies, greater uncertainty to his line than V'ger. But V'ger's worse. So yeah, it's I'm not happy with this. Yeah. Yeah, I'll take a minute or two to say this. I am thinking, I don't know why exactly I didn't want to do this before, but I am kind of leaning towards actually trying to write up my thoughts on this, like write a review for the story. I don't know why I've not been doing it for the other ones. I've just been leaving to the videos. I may try to. Maybe I'll change my mind and not do it. I don't know. But I am feeling there's no way this story is going to turn around and make me happy. That this is going to be a fail to recommend. It's just where exactly in that range where will it be? Will it be in -1 or 0 or 1? I don't know. But it's likely going to be there. And it's a lot of what I will, if I do end up choosing to write a review, taking the time to do that, a lot of it will be because these inconsistencies. Because it's frustrating. Roddenberry is an experienced writer at the time he was writing this. Not necessarily for a novel. Well, I don't know. But still is. He should know what he's doing. He would have been a large enough person to definitely get a very competent editor who apparently was not catching these issues. Yeah, it's a disappointing read in that regard. So. See you next time, I guess. Which, I mean, yeah, I don't think I'm going to start thinking, oh, yes, I'm going to recommend. That's likely not going to happen, but I don't think I'm going to say it's not worth reading. At least there's that. But, yeah, so see you next time.